Okay, we're live. This is day 196, part 4. We're here live at the Capitol. We're just across from the Capitol Grill over here between the Cannon office building here and the Library of Congress. We're just waiting for word to see if DOJ is going to be bringing the documents over, the Trump documents. If you're not familiar with the standoff currently, the standoff is between the House Republicans, mainly on the Freedom Caucus Committee led by Jim Jordan, and the DOJ Assistant Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. So it's called, the clause in the Constitution is Article 2. In Article 2, it does say that the president shall faithfully execute the office of the United States, the laws of the office of the United States. Hello? And so sometimes it's called the faithful execution clause, sometimes it's called the take care clause. But at any point along the way, if the president has a problem with how the law is being executed, if he doesn't feel like any of the executive is responding to a constitutional responsibility, he does have the right to step in with the take care clause. He is the supreme executive within the executive branch. So it certainly is within his powers, if he sees Rosenstein basically stonewalling, he can step in. Now, this is brings up another couple of, I've read the questions from the previous broadcast about Corker and Corker's role, kind of a subterfuge role in the whole Iran nuclear agreement as well. As you remember, Corker was the one who downgraded this being a treaty, and we're talking about a treaty of nuclear weapons. So this is certainly a topic that would require a treaty. And if we have a treaty about fish, between Canada and the United States, we would certainly have a treaty about the most feared, the highest listed state sponsor of terror and their nuclear agreement to develop a nuclear weapon. So Trump could challenge that based on the whole constitutionality. That would be a legal challenge. But Trump could also say that there was the premise of the whole agreement was based on falsehoods and lies, and therefore upgrade these discussions to a treaty. That way he wouldn't necessarily have to rescind the treaty. He could just start another process with the executive saying, we're going to make this a treaty because it should be a treaty. So lots of things are going on here. We have lots of, constitutional crisis every minute, it seems, lately. On the first note, with the documents, it doesn't appear Trump's going to let too much grass grow under his feet before he executes that. I think the logjam for the DOJ documents has really gone on for over a year. This goes all the way back to Devin Nunes being kind of taken out of the Intelligence Committee, and then coming back after being cleared by the Ethics Committee. And there's there's a clear pattern in practice here of continual stonewalling. So it's not something that just happened overnight. That there was just this kind of scruffle up. And so Trump does have, I think, justification to step in. On the whole idea of the Iran nuclear treaty, I definitely think that is something that deserves a Senate debate. And I think Trump has good ground saying it was an agreement made by Congress, and it was I can't actually remember what the voice vote of acclamation or something like that. It wasn't even I don't believe it was even debated in Congress or voted on in Congress. I'll have to check my facts on that. Of course, a lot of people are talking about the Puerto Rico National Guard. And, people are wondering, was DynCorp on that training flight as well? Of course, you have the Puerto Rican National Guard flying back and forth to Puerto Rico and Savannah, Georgia, not far from the Savannah River site at the nuclear NSA. But this flight, I believe, was going from the Savannah River site, the Air Force there, to the Tucson area. So I think I can't remember. I believe that's Georgia 1. Savannah's Georgia 1. Is that Buddy Carter as the House of Representative there? And then going to I want to say that's Arizona 3 along there. And maybe Joe Arpaio. I can't remember the guy. It begins with a G. The Democrat who holds that position. I think Joe Arpaio was interested in that position for Arizona 3. Now, what's interesting, now I might be wrong, but I thought he was from Tucson. What's interesting is we just had Mike Pence recognize Arpaio in a meeting and then go to the border and make a kind of a show of support for, enforcing the Customs and Border Protection folks. So this could be, and then of course we had Jerry Brown rejoinder saying that, over my dead body or whatever, state sovereignty, states' rights. I'm not exactly sure all of his arguments for challenging the president's authority to protect the borders. I'm fairly certain that's explicit in the Constitution. We'll see. Again, like I said, a constitutional crisis every minute. So those are the three big things happening. I don't have much more on the C-130 crash other than 2 people killed out of 5. I just know C-130s seem to be crashing left and right. Of course, we had the KC-130 about 9 months ago crash in Missouri, being refueled mid-flight, Missouri, Louisiana area. So I just met some folks here from Missouri, met some folks from Las Vegas area. Can't remember it. They were not happy with their Democratic representative. So anyway, these flights, I think we have to kind of start taking a look at it. We're starting to see lots and lots and lots of military flights go down. They seem to be in drug interdiction areas, high drug traffic areas. Are these messages being sent by, a DynCorp or some other bad actor saying, hey, talk at your own risk? We really don't know that to be true. What we do need to see is obviously the secure BlackBerry traffic that was encoded by the Imran Awan here in the House to actually see what kind of traffic has gone on those secure BlackBerries here in Congress. There's about 45 in Congress. Again, these cannot be cracked by the NSA. So again, nefarious purposes. They have the server for nefarious purposes here. They have the BlackBerries for nefarious purposes. A 16-year track record of that. It just seems to be that it's crying out for not only a damage assessment, but for a publication of all those messages. Again, all we need really is metadata. We don't really need to have a detailed text, but we certainly would. It certainly screams out that we would want metadata to, from, and coded, and so that we can look at people with the codes. I think when the Hillary documents came out, emails, we found quite quickly that there was code words, like renegade for Obama and evergreen for Hillary Clinton, and Chelsea had her I can't remember what, energy or something like that. And then there's people like Cody Shear and Insulators, but really kind of pass-through cutouts that were talking to Sid Blumenthal, and then other cutouts that perhaps Samantha Powers was a cutout at the UN for her husband's Cass Sunstein, who had recommended an active program of disruption and destruction, in some cases, of political opponents' lives. So a lot at stake here if Trump decides to go the full presidential powers, full expression of presidential powers, and then publishes all the DOJ texts. We'll have all the strokes texts, which I think will include the Iran document. I think it'll include a lot of 1, 2, 3 discussions, which should probably be public. Again, all of these treaties should see the light of day. The CFIUS committee was intended to be a public committee to have public hearings about the business interests of the American people when foreign investment is concerned in the United States. So it's hard to not look at all these 1, 2, 3 agreements and say you should be open about where the nuclear material is being stored. You should be open about where the nuclear material is being spun. You should be open about where it's being mined. You should be open about any ballistic military capability. You should be open about any military uses like submarines. And uh, uh, aircraft carriers, etc. The whole nuclear fuel chain should be open and under discussion. And the eyes of representatives and the eyes of senators should be able to fall on that. Staffers should be able to look at it. Staffers should be able to call the Congressional Research Service and get informed opinion, as well as the GAO for the financial impacts. So all of these things are abused and circumvented if you have secret discussions on secret Blackberries with subterfuge of Gmail accounts, hidden Gmail accounts, erasing comments at the end of the day. So these are workarounds for really the democratic and process and the balance of separation of powers. So does Trump go for the full disclosure of all the text messages on Imran's Blackberries? We don't know. We don't know yet. We don't know what's going to be in the strokes text if those come over. We just don't have an idea yet. We'll be here to bring it to you when it does happen. I'm trying to think of a couple of other things that people ask me questions about. A lot of people seem to be asking me questions about Dr. Corsi. I think Dr. Corsi is a good man. He's a good intelligence analyst. I think sometimes people can fall into a rut of, hey, I wrote a book about that said that, so therefore I have to say something that kind of agrees with one of my previous books. And it almost can kind of condemn you because you kind of maybe stop following the facts and then, protect a franchise that you may have developed. That's the only thing I see in Dr. Corsi. And a lot of people ask me about Q, and I would say the same thing. Q seems to be, I don't differ very much from Q. We just disagree about where, Q is saying Aleppo was the meeting point for the nuclear weapons going back and forth. I have said, and I think if you look at the history of all the chemical weapons being found in Aleppo, Mohan Mustafa going there and being kind of John McCain's man in Havana, man in Aleppo, over the years, his man in Egypt, his man in, for all the color revolutions across Africa, including Syria, as well as maybe potentially Eastern European revolutions. It is the calling card of ISIS to use chemical weapons. First using a nerve agent to take towns, and then using a chlorine type agent to cover the use. So there's really no documented dealing or transfer of nuclear technology to ISIS. So why Q would come out and say that was the transit point when Aleppo was in the hands of ISIS until very recently is a very quizzical, and Q is quizzical for that reason. There's a lot more metadata that would say that happened on Kish Island. Kish Island is a free zone where European engineers are encouraged to come. They don't need a visa. These people would be all involved in the nuclear supply chain. These people would all be very close to be able to verify different facilities and different capabilities. It would be a natural go-between point. We have a DEA agent there who was FBI with weapons of mass destruction background there with Bob Levinson, 11 years there, an admitted CIA agent, an admitted agent with DEA, knows all the people in the Long Island crime families as far as drug running, knows all the people in Florida crime families for drug running. If you're going to negotiate a drugs for uranium or drugs for weapons deal, you would pick Bob Levison. You would pick Bob Levison on Kish Island, even if the decision was being made independently. It turns out we know Bob Levison is on Kish Island. We have Robin Gritz, and we with the testimony there, the family going to Kish Island many, many times, Kish Island over and over again. We have the Imran Awan, again, the three amigos of the CIA car dealership, all being very closely tied to the Iranian and Iraqi nuclear programs. One, Jafar is the Iraqi expert in the Gulf Tainer deal as well. We've got Al-Attar being the a key Iraqi diplomatic contact with Hezbollah, and then we've also got Katak, as Ram would hear when he hears his Chinese rail cars bouncing up and down because they'll stay on the track. It makes the sound katak, 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 because you don't have good steel in those CTA cars, Rom. So every time you hear katak, 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 think the nuclear arms deal falling apart, spindling apart, being splayed out before the American people in every possible imaginable publication. So I just want Rom, when he hears those CTA cars that he loves to be made in China, I want him to hear that katak, 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 just to remind you of Imran Awan, just to remind you of Alatar, just to remind you of Jafar and all the nuclear conspirators. And that's all for right now here on Capitol Hill. Nothing coming down the street. It's about 5 o'clock. We don't think the documents are coming. And we'll bring it to you live again tomorrow if the documents are going to be coming over here. 1.6 million documents. If anybody wants to figure out if it comes over in paper, how many vans that is, I'm going to guess, I want to say during the Roger Starr, the special prosecutor bringing the documents over to Congress for the Clinton impeachment, I thought it was about a similar number of documents, around 1.5 million. I'm going to say that's 5 or 6 vans. Just a guess, or 5 or 6 vans, or maybe 3 or 4 large moving trucks. So something we should be able to see here on these side streets from Independence Avenue and Constitution Avenue. And that's all right now from the House side of Capitol Hill.